But since the last question is not on the subject at hand, I will take one actual last question on the subject at hand. So I will take, yes.
What you're proposing...
This is Stephen Idgaf Miller, Senior Advisor for Policy and Chief Speechwriter for President in a universe known to the layperson as reality, Donald J. Trump. He stands before the intellectually under-equipped battalion of fake news ovines and their commander-in-chief, Jim "Oops, I'm actually Cuban" Acosta, with an expression of sublime ataraxy found only on the faces of esteemed veterans of the great meme wars.
At hand, I will take one actual last question on the subject at hand. So
Idgaf Miller has this expression because he is exactly what he is, and he's going to do exactly what he looks like he's going to do, end Jim Acosta's career.
What you're proposing, or what the president is proposing here, does not sound like it's in keeping with American tradition when it comes to immigration. The Statue of Liberty says, "Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses, yearning to breathe free." Doesn't say anything about speaking English.
"Oops, I'm actually Cuban" Acosta is going to have a go-zee at the tried and true liberal tactic of grandstanding, which is essentially a cowardly kindergartner's way of regurgitating social justice talking points under the pretense of asking a question.
Aren't you trying to change what it means to be an immigrant coming into this country? If you're telling them you have to speak English, can't people learn how to speak English when they get here?
Well, first of all, right now, it's a requirement that to be naturalized, you have to speak English. So the notion that speaking English wouldn't be a part of our immigration systems would be actually very ahistorical. Secondly, I don't want to get off into a whole thing about history here, but the Statue of Liberty is a symbol of liberty enlightening the world. It's a symbol of American liberty lighting the world. The poem that you're referring to that was added later is not actually part of the original Statue of Liberty. But
naturally, Idgaf Miller sees through this Charizard charade, but in being a superior interlocutor, he entertains Acosta's embarrassing autoerotic stimulation under a pretense of his own that he is not about to end Jim Acosta's career.
Some national park revisionism.
No,
the Statue of Liberty
Jim,
has always
Jim,
been
let me ask you a question.
of hope to the world,
Jim,
for people to send
Jim, do you believe,
their people to this country,
Jim,
and they're not always going to speak English, Stephen.
Jim,
they're not
do you
always
believe,
going to be highly skilled. They're not always going to be somebody.
Jim, I appreciate your speech. Jim, I appreciate your speech. So let's talk about this. Jim, let's talk about this. In 1970, when we let in 300,000 people a year, was that violating or not violating the Statue of Liberty law of the land? In the 1990s, when it was 500,000 a year, was it violating or not violating the Statue of Liberty law of the land?
Was it violating?
When it was 700,000 a year. No, tell me what years. Tell me what years. Tell me what years meet Jim Acosta's definition of the Statue of Liberty poem law of the land. So you're saying 1 million a year is the Statue of Liberty number. 900,000 violates it, 800,000 violates it.
You're sort of bringing a press one for English philosophy here to immigration, and that's never been what the United States has been about, Steve.
But your statement's also shockingly ahistorical in another respect too, which is if you look at the history of immigration, it's actually ebbed and flowed. We've had periods of very large waves, followed by periods of less immigration and more immigration, and during we've had
a period of immigration right now. The
president
wants to build a wall. And you want to bring about a sweeping change to the immigration
Surely, Jim,
system.
you don't actually think that a wall affects green card policy. You couldn't possibly believe that, do you? Actually, the notion that you actually think immigration is at a historic law, the foreign-born population in the United States today, Jim.
Leonidas, oh shoot, I'm gonna have to re-record that, I mean Stephen Miller, simply lets the Cuban Missile Crisis sloppily stumble through poorly researched talking points until the latter accidentally and incontrovertibly reveals, as all idiots eventually do, the for some reason present in all liberals racist hypocrisy of the feces-ridden rusty hamster wheel that passes for Jim Acosta's brain.
Notion of, well, they could learn, they have to learn English before they get to the United States. Are we just going to bring in people from Great Britain and Australia?
I am shocked at your statement.
Idgaf Miller then, in a hilarious maneuver that if manifest in tangible form would replace ambrosia as the preferred sustenance of the gods, not just positions himself over the porcelain throne that is Jim Acosta, but further ensures that said righteous loaf of truth he gifts free of charge into Acosta's eager mouth is the exact same social justice bullshit that the cosmopolitan with extra lemon CNN has been attempting to force feed unsolicited to the hardworking American people.
I am shocked at your statement that you think that only people from Great Britain and Australia would know English. It reveals your cosmopolitan bias to a shocking degree that in your mind, no, this is an amazing moment. This is an amazing moment. That you think only people from Great Britain or Australia would speak English is so insulting to millions of hardworking immigrants who do speak English from all over the world. Jim, have you honestly never met an immigrant from another country who speaks English outside of Great Britain and Australia? Is that your personal experience?
Of course, there are people who come.
But that's not what you said, and it shows your cosmopolitan bias. And I just want to say,
It sounds like you're trying to engineer the
I just wanna
racial
say-
and ethnic flow of people into this country. through
Jim,
this
that is one of
policy.
the most outrageous, insulting, ignorant, and foolish things you've ever said. And for you, that's still a really, the notion that you think that this is a racist bill is so wrong and so insulting. Jim, the reality is that the foreign-born population into our country has quadrupled since 1970. That's a fact. It's been mostly driven by green card policy. Now, this bill allows for immediate nuclear family members to come into the country, much as they would today, and then it adds an additional points-based system. The people who've been hurt the most, the people who've been hurt the most by the policy you're advocating are
What policy am I advocating?
apparently just unfettered, uncontrolled migration. The people who've been hurt the most by the policy.
What you're doing is for
The people who've been hurt the most by the policy that you're, the people who've been hurt the most by the policy you're advocating are immigrant workers and minority workers and African American workers and Hispanic workers.
Targeting
And it
the
has
African
no,
American community. Now, you brought it up again. You said you wanted to have a conversation and not target. Is it going to be a target?
This is
now?
what we wanna
You keep
do.
Using the African American community, are you going to target? I'm not trying to be funny, but
right,
you
and
keep
I know what you're
this.
saying is 100% correct.
Thank you.
We want to help unemployed African Americans in this country, and unemployed workers of all backgrounds get jobs. And insinuations like Jim made, trying to ascribe nefarious motives to a compassionate immigration measure designed to help newcomers and current arrivals alike, is wrong. And this is a positive, optimistic proposal that says 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now, 10 years, 20 years, 30 years from now, we want to have an immigration system that takes care of the people who are coming here and the people who are already living here by having standards, by having a real clear requirement that you be able to support yourself financially, by making sure that employers can pay a living wage. And that's the right policy for our country, and it's the president's commitment to taking care of American workers.